this morning. Just a quick reminder as we go into the meeting today, make sure that dealing with any motions or issues that your microphone is clearly in front of you. We will make sure that your wonderful voice is heard by all the observing citizens and one another. So thank you for helping us with that. And we'd like to welcome and introduce a new HRTPO non-voting member this morning, Ms. Rosalind Oglesby, the Franklin City Manager. So we want to say welcome and give you the opportunity to say hello. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you.
One more time. There you go.
Okay, all right. Well, good morning, and I remember most of you from being here back in my time with the city of Portsmouth. So your faces are familiar. You know, you may not remember mine, but thank you for the warm welcome, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much and welcome. And with that, we'll move to item number 2, approval of our agenda. I'll need a motion and a second to approve or amend. What's your pleasure? So moved. Okay. Is there a second? Please. Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. And it is carried. We'll move to item number 3, public comments. Mr. Crum, do we have any public comments today?
We did not receive any comments in advance of today's meeting. Would anybody in the audience like to address the HRTPO board today? Seeing none, Mr. Chairman, back over to you.
Very good. We'll close the public comment period. Move to agenda item number 4, Executive Director's Report. Mr. Crum.
Yes, thank you. HRTPO board members, my monthly report is included in your agenda package. Happy to respond to any questions about any of those items that discuss our ongoing efforts. I would like to highlight 2 items today, Mr. Chairman. First, on October the 28th, and I know we have some General Assembly members here today from our Hampton Roads Caucus. Thank you for being here, everyone. On October the 28th, we're very proud to be the host of the Hampton Roads Caucus meeting in this room. So generally speaking, we have 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. blocked out that day, but I expect an agenda to come out in the coming days. And once that agenda comes out, we'll be certain to distribute that to everyone. And Mr. McCarty, I believe that you and Mayor Pons, as on behalf of the TPO and PDC, are looking to welcome everybody that day in this room. So
Absolutely.
Looking forward to that. The second item, if I may, Mr. Chairman, and I'm sorry for some sad news. Many of you may have heard word that one of our important colleagues from the city of Chesapeake, Mr. Troy Eisenberger, passed away on October 5. And I'd just like to say a few words about Troy. Obviously, for our friends in Chesapeake, such a incredible person and such a vital part of your public works department. And I know did great work for the city of Chesapeake. For us at the regional level, Troy was an incredibly active member of advisory committees to this HRTPO board. And many of you, I'm sure, had the honor to work with Troy over the years. Active member of committees and subcommittees. He was a really respected voice on our Transportation Technical Advisory Committee, and the TTAC brings you recommendations all the time for actions that they recommend. And Troy was always an incredibly active part of that process. I had the opportunity to serve with Troy a couple months ago on a panel and was just always amazed by the knowledge that he had. And his feedback really helped us reach some decisions at this table on critical regional initiatives and projects. You know, our staff knew him well and worked with him. We respected his warmth, his kindness, his professionalism. He's going to be greatly missed by our team, and I know that the city of Chesapeake as well. Mr. Chairman, could I ask if we could have a moment of silence for Troy Eisenberger and keep his family and the city of Chesapeake in our thoughts and prayers, please? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Crum. Anything else, Mr. Crum, today? Any introductions or anything like that from you?
No, I think that will be everything for today.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much. And thank you all for the moment of silence. We'll move now to some partner updates. Agenda item 6, VDOT. Mr. Chris Hall, good morning, sir. Good to see you again.
Morning,
It's been a
Mr.
little
Chair.
while since we've done some agency updates, so thank you for being here.
Yes, sir. So just first of all, I'll just start off by saying a lot of good progress made across the region on our major projects. Really great late breaking news is we expect Mary to start up today for mining back towards Norfolk. So we'll be starting that operation today. It was undergoing some final checks and we anticipate being underway today. So that's a big milestone for the project. And, 8 to 9 months from now, we'll have our second tunnel bored.
Absolutely.
And everything is, there's nothing in the way as we make that drive towards Norfolk. A couple other items, I'll just note the GAP project. So our project in our region, which takes you from the end of the current widening up through just past the New Kent County line. Contractors underway there, and we should see some barriers going up, doing some shoulder strengthening. So that project is now underway, and you'll see some of that work progressing as well as some of the clearing in the median. So good news there. Also, we anticipate, I know for the city of Norfolk and folks that are traveling to the 564 interchange there, we anticipate having the full access to the reversible lanes open by the end of the month. So that'll take some of the pressure off the interchange there. Good news there, as well as we do anticipate we have one additional traffic shift for this year in the Hampton Newport News region, where we'll be extending our lane closures out basically to the 664 interchange there. So we're prepping to do some widening work on the LaSalle Bridge there. Anticipate that going smoothly, but there will be some impacts to that. Again, just appreciate everybody's patience as we work through a lot of this construction. And we're obviously pressing to get it done as quickly and as efficiently as possible. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. And yes, patience is always something wonderfully tried every day. Real quick story. This morning, I would encourage you, do not drive 40 miles an hour in the hot lane. It is quite frustrating when you are in the hot lane traveling behind a vehicle going 40 miles an hour and a line of traffic behind me thinking I am the culprit. So thank you for the reminder that patience is a good thing for us to exercise, but we often don't like the test therein. So thank you all. So now moving to DRPT, Mr. Zach Trogdon.
Thank you. I think I'm on, yes? Okay, thank you. On the transit side, I would just mention that, we kind of got in fiscal year 24's numbers, and then ridership for transit is really getting back to almost pre-pandemic levels. It's in the, 80% range or so, if I'm remember correctly. So, it's been increasing year over year since about 2021. So that's good to see people getting back out and that we're able to support them on the transit side. One other thing is in this region specifically, DRPT, some of our staff met with HRTPO staff recently about the 5310 program, which is for senior and disabled transportation. And there's money available that we really haven't been able to program in some ways. So that's something that we need to work together on, so we make sure it's going to the right places down here and everybody knows that it's available. And so we're working with folks like HRT and the TPO staff. And Mr. Yatrovsky's not here today, but potentially his group to really figure out where some of this funding for seniors and disabled transportation can go to and make the most impact. I'm going to steal Mr. Cross's thunder a little bit. I guess the port opened the Norfolk International Terminal with Central Yard in August, and DRPT, had about a $20 million investment in that. So we were very happy to see that go off. And then also on the rail side, we've supported a couple of communities with, there's a new program from the FRA called the Rail Crossing Elimination Grant. I don't know if you all heard about, just recently a boat trailer was hit by an Amtrak train up in New Kent. Sometimes you wonder how that happens. So there's a program out there to try to make these rail crossings safer or eliminate them altogether if possible. And so I think we've just offered some support to Suffolk and Chesapeake around the Portlock Road area. So we've got a couple of those working with communities. The DRPT's got potentially some support in those. Last thing I would mention, sort of DRPT adjacent, is that we just had a groundbreaking the other day. There's been other ceremonies for the Long Bridge project up in DC, which seems like maybe it doesn't apply very much down here, but all of you may have heard the Long Bridge is a 100-year-old bridge that is the choke point for everything going up the Eastern Seaboard rail-wise. So adding that and adding a new track is going to open. It's just like the tunnel, but on the whole Eastern Seaboard. So it's going to really positively impact passenger rail service and from this area and freight and everything else. So just a big deal there. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, sir. And I will add a little commentary there that there are many choke points in Washington, D.C. that absolutely affect this region. I won't comment on those, but thank you for pointing that out as well. We'll move to our VPA update. He didn't steal all your thunder, I'm sure. Mr. Cross, good morning.
Good morning. Thank y'all for having me. No update on our part. I know Barb looks forward to sharing more next go round. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. We'll move to our transit updates. Mr. Harrell, good morning, sir. Good to see you.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Just two brief notes today. Hampton Roads Transit is celebrating its 25th anniversary this month, which represents, as you know, the voluntary merger between Pentran on the peninsula and TRT on the south side. A lot has been accomplished. There's a lot more work to do, but we're excited to do that, working very closely with our strategic partners. Finally, on Tuesday, November 5th, an important day, HRT fares will be waived on buses, light rail, ferry, paratransit, and on-demand areas. We just kicked off 2 micro-transit zones, one in Newport News and the other in Virginia Beach. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for participating on that. So please get out to the polls, and certainly transit will be free that day. Have a good day, everyone.
There we go. Keeps making a noise. That's interesting. Thank you, sir, for the update. We'll move to the WADA update. Mr. Scalia, good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, to echo my colleague here, WADA itself will also provide fare free as I think we always do on election days. Of note, and to echo Mr. Trogdon, ridership, WADA saw increased ridership from FY24. So we do anticipate breaking our pre-pandemic levels this FY. So good news there. And that goes in line with our transit strategic plan. This year, we'll be setting the conditions for implementing phase 1 of our plan next year, which will be all-day frequency along our Lee Hall, Route 1 Richmond, Pocahontas Trail, and then Richmond Road, are really the main artery through our area. And then lastly, we have 2 big invitation for bids to go out, one within the week for our Northern Transfer Center, which will be up in kind of our northern area, replace that Walmart transfer point we have. So very excited to provide our passengers and employees a proper place for transfer. And then our operations and maintenance facility will go back out to bid, anticipate in November to expand our capabilities on our operations and maintenance side. That is all. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much, sir. We'll now move to FTAC update. Mr. Everly.
Yes, good morning, everyone. The FTAC received an updated list of 2050 LRTP projects and provided some additional input and clarification on some of the requests that were put in that were freight related. We also received an update on the rail crossing elimination study that was mentioned a couple minutes ago. And then thirdly, we received an update on the rail crossing study that staff has been doing to identify particular rail crossings that are the biggest pain points using a revised methodology that had some input from the FTAC. And those are the items for today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the update. We'll move now to our military liaisons. Captain Dees, good morning.
Good morning. I feel a little off being up here at the big table, facing in this direction instead of from the side. And I guess I'm the only one here, so I'll try my best to cover not just the Navy, but anything else that I think is relevant from the overall military. Hey, first off, and I know we had Mr. Schwartz here recently talking to the group about military side of it, but one thing we really are seeing a lot is growth. The war, I think, in the Ukraine has really caused a lot of global awakening, as well as the actions occurring in the South China Sea. It really changed the aspect of how the world is looking at some of the challenges that maybe we viewed were behind us, but now appear to be every day as much as they always really were. We are seeing with that probably exceptional expansion of NATO. So we have several NATO commands already here. One expects to expand significantly. And so we expect to see a little more granularity of that in the near future. We'll talk about that as it happens, but excited to see that as well. We're seeing a significant refocus on military manufacturing. And with that, we've already seen, with the shipyards, a lot of growth there, both in the public as well as the private side, a lot of logistical expansion, and then really opportunities for partnership with that, such as with the Kongsberg Industries up in James City County. And I think there's a lot of opportunity with that. But really what you see is that military manufacturing and the like coming back on shore, ensuring that we have those secure supply lines here available to us, and the realization from that war in Ukraine that you burn through supplies a lot quicker than you projected to. That's always a lesson you learn during combat, in fact, but it's one that we're recognizing that again we need to make sure that those are secure and survivable. And I think in that there are great opportunities for this region. Some have already been acted upon, but there's also there's plenty more that are out there as we continue to develop in that. And I know we've talked about that recently with some of our guest speakers. For us and from our side, it does mean sometimes some of the plans that we had have changed of things that we might have planned on. This is, we probably don't need this, or we're going in this direction, that we're having to reevaluate almost everything we're doing as we continue to or see the evolving of the world around us. We're taking a hard look at things that we thought directions we were going to go, and we might be pivoting to a different direction due to the realities of the world that we live in with that. So we'll continue to keep everyone apprised as they impact anyone in this room, and we appreciate your support with that. So thank you again. And then I'll say finally, thank you for the partnership. Mayor West, thank you with the recent tower, that LS Greenlink. With that, we appreciate the work with that, and that's been across the board with all the cities here as we have these opportunities for you, but also working with us to ensure that we don't expose a vulnerability, so both we can see the economic growth there as well as we don't become an impediment to that and together with it. So thank you for that partnership there. I will then finally kind of end on saying, hey, we just had an incredibly successful Oceana Air Show. I know Miss Mary, you enjoyed that. I know many of you might have as well. I wanted to also invite you as the old CEO of Naval Station Norfolk to Fleet Fest, which is going on this weekend. So if you don't ever get an opportunity to go see what's going on, I invite you to come out. On Saturday, it's open to the public, just like the air show was. So if you want to go see the Gray Hall, you want to walk around and see some of that, of a significant part of what we have in this region, it is free, it is open to the public, and we'd love to have you. So great STEM days going on today, but open to everyone on Saturday. And with that, that'll conclude my update. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain. We appreciate that. We'll move now to item 14, Airport Representatives Update from the Peninsula. Robert Gay. Is he here?
He's not here, but.
He's not here,
From
but go ahead.
Norfolk International Airport.
You're Norfolk, you're next up, so you can go ahead.
Sir.
Welcome.
Good morning. For passenger traffic, we continue our year-over-year increase. For September, we're up 6.2% in passengers, which puts us around 8.7% year over year. We're fingers are crossed to hit that 5 million passenger number this year. So we'll see how that plays out. On the construction update, the movement walkways are going in. So the equipment, we've been doing some floor prep over the last month or so. You've probably seen the walls up, and the equipment starts to go in tomorrow. So that'll be a work in progress. And then our new park and wait lot. So for those of our guests who have always picked up their arriving guests at the curbside of the arrivals building, we've established a cell phone lot that's an existing lot that's really off the beaten path. So we're now building a new park and wait lot that's very conveniently tucked in right before you get to that curbside. So our guests who are picking up passengers can pull in there. There's no wait time limit. There's no charge. The concept is you pull in there and you just wait for your guests to get their luggage and call you on their cell phone. And literally, as soon as you pull out and make a right, you're going to be right there on the curbside. So I have put some cards and the table out there. Feel free to pick one up. There's a little more information on where it's located and the conveniences that that affords as well. And then the federal inspection services and the Concourse A extension, those are all under construction now with tentative completion dates at the end of next year. And then lastly, we do have a project in design to improve the intersection at the airport. So as soon as you cross the Norview Avenue Bridge onto the airport, we're looking to redo that entire intersection. So we've applied for $20 million grant through the bill funds. We're expecting to get an answer on that by the end of the month. And that's through the Airport Terminal Project Program. We feel pretty confident that we should hear some positive news for that. So we'll keep you posted.
Thank you, Mr. Sterling. You guys always have some wonderful things going on there, so we appreciate you sharing that. Mr. Yatrovsky just joined us, sir. Good morning. We'll give you an opportunity. We'll circle back and give you an opportunity to give us some updates.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. The Community Advisory Committee met 1 week ago, and we were at the iconic Mariners Museum in Newport News. Our main topics of discussion were the regional legislative requests and rethinking recycling.
All right, thank you, sir. And with that, we will now move to agenda item number 15, and is our fiscal year 2024 audit and our financial statement. Mr. Crum, you want to tee this up for us?
Yes, before you today is Mr. Michael Garber from PV Mayors, who conducts the audit for our organization. The presentation you're about to hear was received by your Personnel and Budget Committee just this morning. And the budget is before you with action requested for the board to accept the audit as outlined today by Mr. Garber. So Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I will be brief since we did go over this already once this morning. Some of you will get lucky enough to hear this again at 12:30 as well. So third time is the charm. One of my colleagues will be delivering the report at 12:30, though I have to leave. But with that, just the highlights. You did receive an unmodified opinion on your financial statements. That's the one you're looking for. That's a good opinion. You also received opinions on internal controls and compliance, as well as with your federal dollars that you spent and those controls and compliance there, with no reports, no findings in either of those as well. We did not have to adopt any new GASB pronouncements this year. So from our viewpoint, it was a pretty smooth audit. I never want to speak for your finance staff if it was a smooth audit or not, but we hope that it was. We did have a management letter with just one small recommendation for something that was new last fiscal year for them to be aware of, but really nothing worth going into detail here this morning. Overall, it was a successful audit. We had no issues, no findings. Any of our questions, observations, things that we did, everything was answered to us timely and accurately as near as we can tell. So that is my report. But Mr. Chair, if you'll just give me 30 extra seconds, I won't be able to be here for Sheila's final meeting in November. She's counting the days. But I just want to extend a heartfelt thank you for everything that you've done. I was telling somebody earlier, nothing against all my other clients, but I would love to have a Sheila at every one of them. And that is an honest statement. She has just been an absolute great person to work with, her and her whole team. And so nothing but the best in your retirement. And I really hope they let you go at some point. So I know you're staying here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And before we ask for any action on that, I just want to echo, Sheila has been a part of the audit process many, many, many times and has probably forgotten more things than any of us would ever imagine in that particular vein. she's been an asset, and what an amazing addition to the team here, and the decision of our executive director and her being a part. We're grateful for her influence, and we'll be talking more about that in the future. But I did want to put it out there that Isle of Wight County has already said, asked her if she was looking to do part-time work. So I just want to put that out there, that if anyone else were to approach her, we started the process first. I just wanted to put that on the record now. But Sheila, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, we will, Sheila's final meeting, as Mike said, will be November, and we plan on a very, very proper and maybe a little bit of fun, Sheila, recognition of Sheila and her great work in November. So look forward to that. Mr. Chairman, this is before the board for an action. We would recommend that the board approve the FY 2024 audited financial statements.
All right, board members, it's before you. What's your pleasure?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second? Properly moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. And it is carried. Thank you, board members, for that indulgence as well. Yes, Mayor Todd.
Mr. Chairman, just a question. When we have some of the presentations, I guess they pique questions in my mind. I don't want to create a free-for-all, but are we able to ask questions, or we should wait till after the meeting? But then others may have some of the same questions. They wouldn't be.
I think it's appropriate, if you have questions now, to vet it publicly and ask it here. Yes, sir. Feel free.
Well, I'm curious about the CAC committee and this position on recycling.
The chair apologizes, Mr. Mayor. I thought you were talking about the audit. I didn't realize you were talking about that.
No.
If there's a brief answer to that, that would be great for the sake of time, but maybe that's something we take up a little bit more robustly in the future, but we'll go ahead. I apologize for the misunderstanding.
I only have 2 futures left, but that's okay.
Point well taken.
The brief answer is that we were there to gather information. It was a staff presentation about a specific grant that the region has obtained. And so there was no policy position taken.
Just very quickly. Yes, we were fortunate to receive an Environmental Protection Agency grant. What is being funded is a public education program to clarify misconceptions around recycling across the region. And that's something that Katie Collifer is leading, and we discussed with the HRPDC, but something that we also were on the Chief Administrative Officer's agenda on this past month with Katie as well. So we look forward to sharing more with you about that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. All right, moving to agenda item number 16, the 2050 Long Range Plan. Mr. Crum, you want to set that up for us?
Absolutely. Dale Stith, who you all know, leads our long-range transportation planning effort. We are entering a very critical stage of the long-range transportation plan, and Dale's going to discuss with you where we are in that process and what opportunities are for continued engagement. So, Dale.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So yes, thank you for that introduction. Today I will be providing an update specifically on identifying regional transportation needs for our 2050 long-range transportation plan. So I always like to start my presentation to frame why the LRTP is important, and just, very simply, the LRTP, or Long-Range Transportation Plan, is that bridge from where we envision or identify regional transportation needs and how we actually get them built. So regionally significant transportation projects cannot get built if they are not identified and fiscally constrained in a long-range transportation plan. And for our 2050 LRTP, one of our goals is to simplify the messaging for the public. So our vision is very simple. We want to provide transportation for all. We want to make sure that it's equitable, that it's connected, that it's safe, that it's reliable, that it's all these great adjectives in terms of providing transportation for the entire region. And as part of our long-range transportation plan, we are doing scenario planning, which just means that when we're looking out 20 years, we really don't know what's going to happen. So when we're trying to plan a future, we look at multiple plausible futures so that our region is ready and resilient for different things that could happen in terms of growth and how they may impact transportation and travel patterns. So in terms of where we are with the 2050 LRTP, we're just a little bit more than halfway, but the hardest work is ahead of us. For the past few months, we have been working on identifying the needs for the plan, and that's what I'll be going over today. So before I dive into that, for those that might not be familiar, we do not have to list every type of transportation project in a long-range transportation plan. It would be too many. So we only have to list those that we call regionally significant. So in terms of bike and ped facilities, these would be the regional trails. And then in transit, it's really the high capacity fixed guideway type transit projects that we list. We do not have to list all the different bus routes. We do have set asides for these types of projects. And then in terms of roadways, we're only having to individually list like additional widening, additional capacity. So you will not see turn lanes or signals, or shoulder improvements or things like that in a long-range transportation plan. These things do go on, and those are listed in our transportation improvement program. So many of you hopefully remember back in July, we came to you for an interactive work session, and we asked for ideas so that we could identify them as needs for the 2050 LRTP. It was a fantastic experience for staff. Hope it was for you, the board members too. We asked you to be bold, to think big, and you guys really delivered. We collected over 200 regional transportation ideas from that interactive session, and they were very broad in scope. Just a summary here of the type of ideas that we heard. Of course, we heard different various roadway type project improvements, and this ranged from interstate, primary, secondary, and even some local improvements. Lots of transit ideas. It was refreshing to hear how many transit ideas that the board members that you provided us. Lots of ideas about transit-oriented development. Better connections was definitely a theme that we heard. Connections across the region to employment centers, to the airport, to rural areas. Of course, we heard about considering port expansion, sea level rise, housing, to think about affordable fares and free fares. And then, of course, transportation technology. This is where you all really delivered in terms of thinking big and being bold. We heard lots of ideas about autonomous vehicles and air taxis and flying cars, which is near and dear to my heart. So the next few slides are going to be some maps just to show you some of these projects. It will not be all projects, but just some of the key highlights of suggestions that we heard from that July session. So this first shows some of the interstate ideas that we heard. Of course, a lot of you are still interested in us completing that Hampton Roads Express Lane all the way back, looping around to the Coliseum in Hampton. And then some, of course, the HRBT we're hoping actually gets completed by the time we have to adopt the 2050, but we may still have like a little overlap there for a year where we have to still fiscally constrain and represent some of that construction. Lots of interchanges along the way, 64-264, 64-464, Bowers Hill, widening 264. We also heard ideas about, express lanes along 264. Lots of support for I-87, not only from this board, but from other committees and the public as well. Going up to the peninsula, of course, the 664 widening, the Dindy interchange, and then the 64 Fort Eustis interchange as well. In terms of other highway projects, and I won't call out all of them, but we heard various ideas for improving US 58 corridor, even some bypasses, the same with 460, improvements along there and a bypass around Windsor. Widening the James River Bridge was an idea that we heard, and also a new upper James River Bridge crossing. One of our favorites, Chris says this looks like a meteor impact map, but one of our suggestions was for an outer ring. Basically a fourth crossing is what it was referred to. So again, you all really delivered in terms of thinking big and being bold. In terms of transit, some of the ideas that we received was with the Hampton Roads Express Lane that have express bus service along those express lanes and then strategic commuter park and ride lots along the express lanes. We also heard a lot of suggestions for high capacity transit, suggestions on the peninsula, basically from Williamsburg to Newport News and Hampton. And then on the south side, some of the fixed high capacity transit ideas we've seen before, like to Chesapeake and to Suffolk, but then some, and also to the naval base. But some new ideas was to Military Circle Mall, and then to Portsmouth as well. And then the Suffolk Amtrak station was also a suggestion that we received. And lots of ferry ideas. Expanding ferry across the Elizabeth River, ferry across the Hampton Roads Harbor, providing ferry service, additional ferry service between the south side and the peninsula, going up the James River, and even ferry service to Richmond, and an idea to have it go all the way up to DC. And then for active transportation or bike and ped, of course, our main regional trails, we had lots of suggestions along Trail 757, and then of course the Southampton Roads Trail, including suggestions for the Suffolk Seaboard, Virginia Beach Trail, and lots of other little pieces to help build these regional trails. So moving on from that, in addition to the great feedback that we received from the board in July, we've also been collecting ideas from other sources, namely from our current long-range transportation plan, which is for the horizon year of 2045, and that would be for both our metropolitan area and our rural area. We also have lots of studies that our staff work on. So any of those studies, if they have recommendations for transportation improvements, we gathered those as well. We had a candidate project portal that was open to the public where they could, it was an interactive map where they could submit transportation ideas directly to us, and that was open and available to the public for over a year. We also worked with our different committees, the Community Advisory Committee, the Freight Transportation Advisory Committee, and other community groups to give us ideas directly. And then we're still wrapping up some in-house analysis in terms of future traffic projections, some resiliency analysis. So if there's high vulnerable infrastructure, that we're making sure that we're considering that as we're planning 20 years from now, and some equity analyses. So the next few slides are going to be some graphics that kind of summarize what are some insights from these ideas. So in terms of the projects submitted, we received almost 700. It's an incredible amount of suggestion. I think it's the most we've ever received for a long-range transportation plan. And a bulk of that came from this board from that July interactive session, again, over 200. The next majority came from our current long-range transportation plan and our regional vision plan, then followed by the public with 82 submissions directly from the public. And in terms of these projects, what we saw was there was a lot of overlap, a lot of duplication. And what that tells us is that these are needs that different community groups and populations within our region are experiencing. So of course, we try to condense that down just to one. And then one of my earlier slides, I had said not every type of project is listed in an LRTP, so we do remove those. So when we remove those project suggestions that aren't LRTP applicable, again, these are still projects that move forward in other programs, and we remove those duplications, we're still looking at over 300 unique project suggestions for staff to analyze for the 2050 long-range transportation plan. In terms of the modal split for these project ideas, most of them, as what is historically with the LRTP, most of them are roadway type suggestions. But what we did see with the 2050 is we have much more transit and active transportation suggestions than we've had previously, which again is great to see when we're trying to develop a multimodal long-range transportation plan. And then we also had a lot of general or broad ideas that we are working with stakeholders to try to refine to see if we can make them into a project that we can analyze, or maybe it's a project that we forward to VDOT or to HRT or WADA or another agency to consider as a part of their planning processes. We have on this slide, you can see 32 specific intermodal freight, but it's actually bigger than that because a lot of our roadway projects support freight movement. So I think when working with the FTAC, we had identified over 80 suggestions that would help improve the movement of freight in this region. And then for our rural, which would be Franklin and Southampton, most of these suggestions come from our current 2045 rural long-range transportation plan. These projects are a little bit different in that we do list those smaller scoped projects because this is a vision plan. It is not fiscally constrained. And a lot of the improvements that can happen in the rural areas are those smaller scope projects like your signal timings or your stop signs or access management. So this is a mess, but really what this map is to convey to you is that we had a ton of ideas and it's distributed across the region, and that's what we want to see. We want to make sure that the suggestions aren't just concentrated in one area. It really does. If we had all the money in the world, I mean, we could certainly improve regional connectivity. We do have to prioritize these suggestions and pick those top robust, resilient projects. And of course, that goal is to improve connectivity, safety, and all those wonderful adjectives to make sure that we are providing transportation for all. So we have been working with your technical staff to make sure that these suggestions align with locality comprehensive plans. We have heard from most localities, but not all localities. So in your agenda, there is a link to the draft list. Any locality that is highlighted in I think it's a teal color, we're still working to get that feedback. It's very important that we do get that feedback because we want to make sure that we're not promoting a project that has a negative impact to your locality and that we're not missing a transportation idea that is important to your future growth. And staff is continuing to work through these. And I will say when you click on the link later on, we have touched base with some of the localities, but again, if it's teal, make sure that we actually get that feedback. And then we're still continuing to review these projects and make sure that if it's not LRTP applicable, that we are sending those suggestions to the appropriate program. And then high level, in the next few months, we will be coming back to you, hopefully in November, if we can complete the input and review from your locality staff. But it may be January, but our goal is to have you approve this candidate project list in November. And then we'll move forward with prioritization to evaluate those projects, which is generally about a 6-month process. We'll come back to you with draft prioritization scores. And then we've got to identify a funding plan to say, here are the ones that we can actually afford over the next 20 years. This is just to show you that we have a very robust prioritization process in which we evaluate our candidate projects by project type. And we're looking at the utility of that project, the economic vitality benefit, and the viability of that project suggestion. And that's all I have. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Very good. Thank you for that presentation. There's a lot of information in it. I just want to encourage you, as Dale shared, particularly our CAOs and folks that are around the table, please take a look at the projects and give feedback. We definitely don't want something to pop up later and someone say, well, no one told us. Well, we're telling you, and we want you to engage the process so that nothing pops up later and we have to revise. A lot of hours and a lot of work goes into these particular plans. So on behalf of our staff, please put that in your priority list to give feedback on that. So with that, any questions, comments? Mr. Shepherd?
Yeah, I just appreciate the briefing, and it's interesting. We can get through the system a lot faster than we had to when we started making bigger projects now. It's great. But in the projects that we currently have, we had certain percentages laid against the prioritization. And my understanding, but I don't know this for a fact, that there's some of these percentages might change in our evaluation. Are those going to be presented to the board for consideration?
Are you referring to the actual weights on
Yes.
how we, if we do make changes to the weights, we do work through our committees and it would be presented to the board. So right now
So the
we,
answer is yes.
yes, but we do not have plans right now necessarily to significantly change those weights. But if we do,
Well,
it
the
will.
criteria, I mean, the criteria was, you know, we had to beg and plead to get the law changed in 2013. And so part of that was, you know, congestion relief. That was the really big thing. So with these new projects and the scope of stuff, although they're in this general area of the, you know, of the area, you know, like around 64 and all those kind of things, 64. But there's some changes that need to be made in those prioritizations, I would think, based on different criteria. You know, I can't give you any right now, but I just remember that we were looking at that evaluation before, and there were some of the numbers I thought at the time were not questionable, but they were easy to understand because they were tied to, like, you know, do you do 64, you know, to Richmond first, or do you do the, you know, the loop or whatever, right? And so we went through that criteria. I just wondered how, whatever the projects are, because we should be addressing almost all the big projects in the next, by 2035, that whatever we come up with can't be the same criteria.
Right. So with the congestion relief criteria, that is specific to the HRTAC funding. So our regional priority projects do have that caveat that they have to address the most congestion relief for the most number of citizens. So that's a little bit different than the prioritization criteria. So our prioritization criteria is unique to our region. So it has over 70 measures that look at more than just congestion. I would say congestion only probably represents about 30% of our regional prioritization tool. But we're looking at access, we're looking at equity, we're looking at safety.
Well, the
So
board, I understand. The board just needs to be aware that, you know, we can sit there and argue over the big level of stuff. But when you get down into the weeds, when you start looking at where the percentage, you know, if I recall, you use percentages on various aspects of it. And so you weigh them based on that.
yes.
Okay. So somewhere in there, I think the board needs to be paying attention to that aspect, so that when we get down to it, we'll know the justification of why we're spending some money on this side first versus money on that side, or this side, you know, whatever, north, south, east, west. Okay. I just want to bring that to everybody's attention, because you can forget it was a tough road to hoe to get to this point. It didn't just happen just with, you know, with Kentucky windage. It was a lot of staff work that went into that. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think staff will keep us apprised on those changes and algorithms, because to your point, I think that'll be important for all of us to understand where it comes from. Thank you. Mayor Tuck?
My comment, I guess, is somewhat along that of Mr. Shepherd. And I was going to save this till the end on the new business, but yeah, I guess my concern is the fact that it is that legislation in 2013 was primarily for projects for congestion relief and mitigation. And yet, you know, I saw that diagram where you had, since draft suggestion highlights of roadways. And it seems to me that, you know, right now what we're doing only benefits certain communities. And yet all of us in this region have needs. I know Hampton has specific ones we're trying to get done. Mr. Shepherd always talks about Victory Boulevard, I believe. And we're constrained by how we can use that money, that 7/10 of 1 cent. So I just, you know, we talked about this other 3/10 of 1 cent. And, you know, I don't want to give anybody who's running against the current mayor, you know, soundbite to say, hey, he supports a tax increase. But maybe after the election, we can bring this back up, but only have one more meeting. And in fact, someone said, well, next year, you'll have all the General Assembly candidates running for reelection, and they wouldn't consider adding any kind of tax increase in election year. In Virginia, there are elections every year. So the question is, when do we bite the bullet and try and get the additional funding that's needed, much like we did the special legislation in 2013?
So point well taken, Mayor Tuck, and I believe we'll have some further discussion on that as we move forward, because to your point, there are significant challenges to our region that we do have to discuss and begin some of the dialogues earlier rather than later, because as we all know, sometimes it takes a lot longer to get certain things for the region, as we've seen with different priorities. So I think point well taken, and I believe that that conversation is going to continue as we move forward. Pretty well guarantee that that conversation will continue moving forward. So thank you for that input. Other questions or comments on the long-range plan? It is an action item. Yes, sir, Mr. Crum.
Dale, maybe this would be a good chance for us to stress and clarify as well. So the HRTF money through HRTAC has been such a mover in our region, right? With this generational suite of projects that we've been so fortunate to build. Keep in mind that as Dale looks at the LRTP with her team and runs that prioritization process, Dale, we're prioritizing for a number of funding programs, right? From Smart Scale to transit FTA programs to Federal Highway Administration programs. So that's why, to Mr. Shepherd's point, this is going to look so much beyond. Congestion relief is part of it, but Dale, really, you're looking holistically in different buckets of money that Dale has to project as she looks at what funding might be available to build these projects.
Absolutely correct. The HRTF is only one source, albeit it is a major source of the funding sources for the long-range transportation plan. But our tool is dynamic enough that we can use that tool and leverage the outputs from it to make sure that each different funding source with their different caveats, that we're picking those best projects for that particular funding source.
Very good. I wanted to finish the statement. So it is an action item coming up in November. And so just please, again, review the documentation and provide that feedback because it will be an action item coming up in November. Yes, sir.
Okay, I appreciate what you just said, and you kind of give us kind of a framework where this is going to occur. I'm kind of looking at Donnie, and he's like about to go over the cliff, and I'm just, it's like, when are we going to step up and do something? Okay, I mean, seriously, we can sit here and talk all day long, and we know this is painful, but the point in here is here's my concern. If we mess around and we end up building all our big projects, my concern is the state's going to take the money away from us. All right. I mean, there's nothing in the law that keeps the state from taking the money away from us. When the state right now, transportation budget, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the transportation budget includes the money we're spending right here in Hampton Roads. I mean, if you got a $10 billion budget and half of it is our money that we're spending here, okay, I'm always concerned, and I've seen this, that the money's going to be taken away from us if we don't step up and do something smart with it. So I don't know how much we're going to be able to do with the new projects if they wander off the reservation, if you will, with the law as it was established in 2013, because it was designed to address only really the big major projects in Hampton Roads. And we spent all the money out to 2035. At least that was the last time I looked at it. So I'm just concerned that if we eventually, probably within, I don't say 2 years, but if we don't do something, then I'm thinking that what'll happen is that you'll get new delegates, new whatever up there, and especially over in the west side of the state, and they'll go, this money will just go away. And it will go away not from us. I've never seen the government ever say, "No, we give you money back in a reasonable manner." What'll happen is take it and spend it somewhere else in the state. So, I mean, these are my concerns. All right, and I'm voicing it, and I think that 0.3% is going to be a big one for us to wander off the roads, and somewhere near either with our legislative package that we submit, or we can wait for an election. I don't know which one you'd wait for, but we've got to do it. We've got to do something.
Mr. Shepherd, to your point, I have asked to reconvene the legislative committee, and we will have further conversations on this. My commitment to you and to the commission, or to our committee, is that we will continue to have this conversation. There will be some difficult conversations that we'll have to have, and looking at impacts throughout our region. So that's my commitment. And I think we've had a lot of discussion about that over the last several months, probably a little bit more than the last several months. So point well taken. And it will be something of subject matter in the future. I can promise you that. It appears that we have lost our quorum as far as being, now, this wasn't an action item, so the other action items, we may just have to have some presentations perhaps, but we will not be able to take action on any further items until a quorum is reconvened, unfortunately, so we've lost that. Mr. Crum, what is your suggestion on moving forward with the rest of the agenda?
Well, first off, to conclude this item, again, to Dale's point, really critical, take a look at your projects. Any ideas we have not captured, please send them our way. Because once Dale's team starts working these through that prioritization process, it's going to be important we have all those items. Dale, I don't think we need any other action on this particular item, but we really appreciate the conversation. And the other thing I just wanted to pause on, this slide it really captures it. There are TPOs that perhaps have 12 to 15 people working on their long-range transportation plans. Dale's team is small but mighty. I just want to recognize the incredible work that Dale, Kyle, and Vikas contribute and do for this effort. It really is a vast amount of work. So thank you, Dale, for everything you did. So, Mr. Chairman, I would recommend we move on to item number 17. This will be a briefing item today, but we would bring Mr. Keith Nichols, one of our HRTPO principals, to the podium to discuss the VDOT functional classification update.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that'll be for today, just informational, as we cannot take action. So,
May I ask a point of clarification for the last item? Sorry, I didn't.
yes.
So when it does come before us as a vote, is it coming, because there's one item in there in which our county is not going to be supportive. So but there are many that we will. So I just want to know the best way in which to.
Yes, you will get a number of opportunities for that input, and nothing will end up in our plan without action by this board.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but thank you for that question and clarification. Dale, anything to add?
No, that's it. There's definitely opportunities for us to document any concerns. And then the board takes action at all the important milestones. Nothing goes in the plan without this board's approval.
Thank you.
But great question. All right, Mr. Nichols, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. I was going to ask for approval today on our roadway functional classification update, but for now I'll just do for your information, and we'll come back and ask for approval later. So I want to give a very brief background on what functional classification is. Every roadway in our region, from the busiest interstates down to your local roadways that you live off of, have a functional classification designated on it. And that's based on a character or service that the roadway provides. So some roadways like interstates or freeways or expressways provide a large amount of mobility, high speeds, carry a lot of vehicles, but don't provide a lot of accessibility. Whereas other roads like your neighborhood roadways provide accessibility to every house on the street, but don't provide a lot of high speeds or anything like that. So functional class is divided down into those different categories. Some have a middle range of mobility and accessibility, whether it's principal arterials, minor arterials, or major collectors or minor collectors. But you can see on the right kind of how it proportionally impacts mobility and accessibility. So functional class is important for a few reasons. Some roadway projects, depending on the roadway classification, may or may not be eligible to use certain transportation funding pots. In the state of Virginia, maintenance payments are directly related to the amount of miles of different types of roadway classifications you have in your city. So the amount of money for maintenance is impacted by this. And then certain road design and access management standards. So obviously interstates are designed differently than neighborhood roads are and things like that. Those are all based on standards, based on the functional classifications. So this is the existing roadway functional classification map. It's on VDOT's website if you ever want to check it out. But this was the basis that we started with when we started working on the roadway functional classification update that I'm about to talk with you today. So VDOT is conducting a statewide update to the functional classification maps. This occurs every 10 years, roughly following the census and the new data that's provided from the Census Bureau. And the last time it was updated was back in 2014 when it was approved by FHWA. So MPOs were asked throughout Virginia, MPOs were asked by VDOT to review these roadway functional classification maps that I just showed you and to coordinate with the locality staff to recommend a list of changes that we could provide back to VDOT to the existing system. So over the last few months, we've worked with your locality staff and came up with a list of recommendations that I'll show you here in a minute. So this is the list of recommendations that we came up with. Working with your locality staff, along with analysis that we did, there were a total of 73 recommendations for changes to the functional classification network that we came up with. So the table of all 73 changes are included in your agenda packet today, and you can see on the map roughly where they're all located. So I do want to note that these are in addition to recommended changes that VDOT had made, but theirs were a lot more what I would consider administrative, I guess, maybe mapping errors, things like that, which versus ours, which was more looking at the characters of the roadway and which ones should be updated. So this list of recommendations was shared with the VDOT central office. They provided us back their comments and their recommendations, which we shared with all the locality staff. And so all the comments we received from VDOT is incorporated into this list of 73 recommendations that you see in your agenda packet today. So with that, we were going to ask for two actions. One was for approval of the list of 73 recommendations that you see there, and then VDOT also had a resolution that they asked all MPOs to pass based on this functional classification update. So that's everything I have, unless there are any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Any questions or comments on what you've seen? Again, we cannot make it an action item due to the quorum loss, but we'll entertain questions, comments. Yes, sir. It's in the tab right behind item 17.
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, what we can do now that the board has received the full briefing this month, we can place this as an action item on next month's consent agenda for the HRTPO board.
I think that'd be acceptable. Thank you. No other questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Nichols, for the presentation. We'll now move to agenda item number 18. And Bob, would you like to set that up for us?
Absolutely. I'd like to invite Quan McLaurin from our HRPDC and HRTPO staff to the podium. Quan is going to provide an overview presentation today of our proposed public engagement plan, which is about to go out for public comment and review. Quan?
Thank you so much, Bob. Good morning, everyone. So today, as Bob mentioned, I'll be talking to you about our public engagement plan. What is a public engagement plan? Some of you may know it as a public participation plan. That's what the plans previously were. We had a public participation plan for the HRPDC and for the HRTPO. We'll now have that replaced with a public engagement plan. Not only is it a federal requirement, but it's an opportunity for us as a planning agency to really take the next step forward as it relates to engaging with our community, ensuring that they also have a stake in our planning practices. As you can see up there, sorry, Mr. Harrell, I know that you probably weren't expecting to see yourself on the screen, but we have some of our examples of engagement that we've already done throughout the region. You can see some of our actual TPO staff there at the farmers market. That's from our Transit Advocacy Day in 2023, I want to say. But this is really an opportunity for us to go back, realign our efforts, and make sure that we're doing right by our public. So what's different, you might ask? So as mentioned before, there were two separate plans. There will now be one. We're making more of an effort to ensure that it is accessible. When you read through the plan, you'll see that it provides an overview, an introductory overview of our different departments. The goal is so that obviously, our stakeholders need to know what's in our public engagement plan. Our federal and state partners need to know, but the everyday members of the public who may not be as familiar with what an HRPDC is, what an HRTPO is, what is regional planning, they have the opportunity now to open up that document and get more of an introductory understanding and then know where they can find more information. We also adopted some additional practices such as the International Association of Public Participation recommendations, also known as IAP2, and looked at their spectrum of public participation and involvement and aligned our engagement methods with that spectrum. And then, as many of you know, we just came out of a pandemic in 2020. So engagement efforts look a little bit different. So we're looking at, what have we done that's been successful, that's been able to engage with our community, and how do we need to shift moving forward in our current world. So just some, broad overviews, looking at some of our engagement efforts. Many of you may have seen our old website and seen what it looked like there. Now we have a brand new website that's largely thanks to Mr. Matt Klepeyes and Mr. Joe Turner and Mr. Rob Cofield, our communications team, who are all in the room. Very thankful for the hard work that they've put in there. When you look at our website, you can even see where after we did our updates, we were able to gain a lot more traffic. So from March 2024 to August 2024, we were almost at the same amount that we had from April 2022 to April 2023. So we're well on track to be surpassing and outpacing our previous, at least, digital engagements there with the website. You can also see that as evidenced by our social media. On the left there for the PDC, Facebook, and sorry, y'all, I'm trying to get it in the right place. You can see there for the TPO Facebook as well. And then again, with our communications team and their efforts, you can see where our engagements, just went through the roof. As we have tried to just align our efforts and our communications with our Hampton Roads community to meet them where they are and bring the information to them. We're also on LinkedIn as well. This is a plug that I will put out there to you all. If you aren't following us yet on social media, if you aren't seeing what's going on there, please check us out. We're also on Nextdoor as well. A cool thing about Nextdoor is it allows us to be able to reach out either by neighborhoods or sections or to the entire region, which is pretty cool. So some outreach highlights, we had, Dale Stith was just up here talking about the LRTP. We had over 1,500 participants in the scenario planning survey. We had over 1,400 participants in the safety study survey. When I go out into the community and I talk to our different residents across the region, something that is consistent and that we hear, people want more connectivity. They often mention rail as well. They ask us about resiliency planning. That's something that's on the forefront of everyone's mind since we are a coastal region. We want to have newer and deeper connections. I need to know, what are the different groups that are out there that we need to be engaging with so that we can have their input into our plans. As was mentioned earlier and is a running theme in our planning efforts, we know from our perspective, from the technical perspective, what looks great for planning, but it's always so helpful and what is appropriate for planning, but is also always so helpful to have that community input and that community engagement so that we make sure that we're not doing something that may cause additional issues or concerns for the future. And then just from 2020 to 2024, there were over 478 in-person information presentations. So just as an overview of some goals, we want to have better connection. We want to make sure that it's more accessible. We want to make sure that the engagement that we have is actually meaningful. And then we also want to be inclusive. We understand that historically there have been different disadvantaged and marginalized groups that have not been included in planning and that have even been harmed by planning and are still being harmed today. And so we want to make sure that we don't continue in those steps and that, people aren't looking back at us in a century or, so and saying, what happened there? So how can you help? I know that you were waiting for that question, right? This is what I need from you. The plan's going to go up today on our website. If you could review it, one, if you could socialize it with your public information officers, with any of your community engagement specialists, or any actively involved community-based organizations, that would be a great help to me. They can send all of their feedback to us here at the PDC, me specifically. And then our public comment period does close on December 2nd. So if we could try to get that input in by then, I'm going to be working between December 2nd and our January board meeting to incorporate that feedback and bring the final product to you. And then in January, I'll be asking for the board's approval and adoption of that plan. In the meantime, I'm also going to be engaging with different groups and asking them for their input and asking, what did we miss? What do we need to focus on a little bit more? So that's how you can help us, and those are our next steps there. Thank you. Are there any questions at this time?
Board members, any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So will the document draft be uploaded today?
Yes,
Besides the one pager?
that's correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. Other questions? Yes, sir.
This seems to be all the rage. Do you have a QR code?
I can get a QR code.
Good question. Yes, sir, Mr. Crum.
So I'd like to ask for two additional requests of our board members. First off, Quan, thank you. Quan's put a lot of work into this document. You're beginning to see our outreach exponentially increase over the last several years. And I really appreciate the team and everybody leaning into this to make this happen. So two requests for our board members. First off, Quan mentioned our Facebook pages. They are active. They are current. They have information on them that your constituents, I believe, will find very, very interesting. Anything you can do as you do newsletters for your districts or that you share with your constituents, please consider providing our HRPDC and HRTPO Facebook page as an opportunity for residents to get access and learn about regional things that are happening around this table and at other committees. I think your members of your community find it very, very helpful. The second thing that I will say is, as Quan mentioned, would ask for your assistance to help us reach the community. Keep us in mind if you're having meetings with your districts or with your neighborhood groups or with your constituents and you think they might like to learn about transportation or water or any of the other items, Quan, that we're working on, keep us in mind. We'd be happy to come out to your communities with you. Some of you have done that and we've enjoyed those opportunities. But if you find that in your discussion with your communities, having us there to give brief updates on some of the things that are happening, if that would be helpful, please keep us in mind. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. And I will just say to Quan and the entire team, they work really hard on the social media presence and our media presence out there. The changing, I will encourage you, check it all out. There's been a complete overhaul of things. It is much easier to navigate. I'm a big proponent of technology and media access. So please give them that kind of feedback. Even if the feedback is, hey, I noticed a different color or something, give them feedback. Let them know you took time to at least look at something. That's a big deal to our staff and to our folks that work really hard. Yes, ma'am. If you want to hit your.
I'm trying to find it. Can you tell me what the social handle is?
Yes, it is. I'll go. Is it on here?
Matt, can you provide that real quick?
Okay. My apologies. I'll make sure that's on the slides for the future.
And if anybody wanted to see Matt afterwards, he could help you and get you to that. Okay?
He's hiding back there in the corner. Very good. Again, no action on that. We will not be able to take action on our consent agenda. I will just make one final comment on the presentation. You saw that outer ring. You know, I read somewhere in an ancient text that a merry heart is good like a medicine. So the next time you see that little ring that was drawn, think of an evolving Pac-Man or the Death Star. It actually looks like. Anyway, that sounded better in my head, but now that I put it out there, maybe probably should have stayed in my head. I don't know, but that just, my mind thinks that way, and I wanted to share the joy with you. But anyway, Mr. Crum, take us through the rest of our agenda, if you
Well,
would.
Dale, I think you have all kinds of ideas for the final cover of our long-range transportation plan. So, Mr. Chairman, as mentioned, we will not be able to take action on today's consent agenda. What we'll be maybe doing now as we move into November, we'll front load the agenda with some of those consent items to get those actions taken care of. You'll see in the agenda your 3-month tentative schedule. We will have a meeting in November. We meet in November, and then HRTAC will meet in December. You have in your agenda minutes of your HRTPO Advisory Committee meetings, some information items. Mr. Chairman, perhaps call for any old or new business.
Okay. Any old business or new business?
I just have an observation.
Yes, sir.
All due respect, we have members from our General Assembly here, and I'm not sure if we ever asked them to comment, whether it's just to update us on something or just tell us about something they've observed while they're here.
Absolutely, that'd be appropriate. Please.
I'm sorry, I missed the whole question.
I just
That's
put
how
you on
you-
the spot, that's all. No, I've said that, you're here, and I don't know if we've ever given you an opportunity to, state something that you want to make public. Maybe something that's upcoming in next year's session that you anticipate maybe need support from our group on. I know we have requests we want to make of you.
Hint, hint, right? That's good plug. I appreciate that. Go ahead, please.
So you can always request.
I'll wait till next month.
All right. Any new business for the good of the order? All right. If none, thank you for your indulgence. Any final thoughts, Mr. Crum?
Just that we have lunches for everybody over in the 757 room behind our reception area. And as a reminder, the HRPDC meeting will begin at 12:30. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you again. We are adjourned.